So let's tell us what we got wrong with Napkin to reality, and again, in the nicest way possible, obviously.
No
And
holds barred. Go for it. Go for
and
it.
then tell me your journey. I want to hear your journey, and I might chime in on some things, but I do a little bit of IP. Again, I'm a surgeon by most of the time. You are the expert. You are this is the reason you're on this show, is you've gone the whole way, and you know more behind the scenes than anybody I know. So tell us what you had to do this. I want the listeners to hear this. This is what it takes, guys. So this is going to be interesting. So go.
Of course. Yeah. So just a really high level overview of our company. So graduated from the University of Tennessee in 2019 and officially founded the company, became a full-time entrepreneur. The first thing we did when we graduated, so I teamed up with my co-founder. This is when I start talking about we did an accelerator program. So an amazing resource for startups that are actually trying to go forward with the next steps of their company. It's called 0 to 510, and it's in Memphis, and it's a play off the name of the 510 and the 510K, which was discussed a lot in Napkin to Reality and the pathway that we took. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So did that accelerator help set us up really well to prepare for fundraising? So we got tired of living big check to big check and pitch competition to pitch competition. So raised our first round of investment funding in 2020. Used that to put towards all of the testing necessary to get clearance from the FDA through the 510K. And that went through in 2021, and then had our first surgery in the very end of 2022. So that's just kind of a high level of where we've been and what it's been like. And a lot of work and steps have gone into that. So I kind of mentioned that for me, what made this a reasonable journey and gave the motivation and inspiration was just breaking it up into individual steps. And so one of the things very early on, someone said after I won a pitch competition, was you need to get a patent to protect your idea. Dr. Garcia talked about a lot of different pathways. You can partner with a larger, big company or take the path that I took and start your own company. Regardless, protecting the invention is the key first step. So I really remember it was, again, we were just winning pitch competitions and scraping together the first capital. I was on the phone with our patent attorney, had just finished the application, and it was ready to submit, which means the fees hit and everything. And I remember our patent attorney telling me, patents are like potato chips. You can't have just one. And I was on a call, but I kind of I made a face. He couldn't see me. But I was like, that's crazy. We barely have enough money for one. Well, fast forward, we now have a patent portfolio that has 3 US patents, 13 international patents across the country. So that advice that I got really early on has been critical to building value from the earliest stages for our company.
I think that's important for listeners too. There's 2 routes. Leah took the higher risk, but higher reward and harder work, right? There is partnering with companies where you have a smaller chunk of ownership of the patent, maybe, hopefully some ownership. And that's what a lot of the orthopedic surgeons do initially on. But what Leah did is a different animal. And so it's good for you guys to hear this, because that's really, that's a less common route, especially to get all the way to the success level she did. I mean, each one of these she could fail, and she found a way not to. So, sorry, keep going.
So true. And again, it goes back to some amazing people that we worked with, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we specifically get to maybe the FDA and 510K. But before we could even get to that, right, we had a patent to protect the idea, the innovation. And the next thing was, how do we go about even making the product? And I always laughed. The first versions of EasyWhip were hand-built prototypes. I was ordering things off of eBay, finding other sutures on the market that I could find that were maybe expired or things, purchasing those, ordering needles and hand milling them on a mill and drilling, and just to have feasibility prototypes that we put in the hands of surgeons like family friends that we knew, other surgeons in our network, and said, hey, how's the size of this? What materials does it have to be made out of? And that was a big step to start actually talking about the device and not being so proud that it had to be perfect to get it in the hands of a surgeon. I think that was a really good step that we took early on, was to just get what we call a minimum viable prototype or product and get it in the hands of a potential customer to really get feedback early on and make sure how the device is being designed is built for the surgeon and something that can bring value and benefit. So those early prototypes were important. And then it was getting the attention of a manufacturer and being a startup and asking about their capabilities. And when we said, oh, our first run, we're thinking maybe 1,000, and manufacturers laughing and saying, we heat the machine up, it warms up, and it makes 1,000, 1,000 sutures. So finding a manufacturer that had the capabilities, we just tapped into our network and started pitching not as much the business case, but also the inspiration behind it. And we found an amazing manufacturer that just makes surgical needles, a really specialty niche in the market, if you will, that was a critical step early on to making sure we succeeded and passed all of these tests and necessary steps, like Dr. Garcia mentioned, is so important.